Welcome back. You're listening to Nate the Hate on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Be sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. We are making our march to 11,000 subscribers. And today's episode is dedicated to Calvin Atkinson, whom generally and graciously donated $100. And it's also dedicated to the Zelda Sensei, who donated a very curious 10217. I believe the 217 is a reference to the date of the most recent Nintendo Direct that we are going to discuss today. And I'd like to thank both of you for your generosity and continued support. And I'd like to welcome in now my co-host, Modern Vintage Gamer.
What's going on, Nate? It's great to be here, and it's great to be back. I know we were off last week because there wasn't really much going on. I think, we tried to have an episode a week, sometimes more, but in some cases when there isn't much news to talk about, we probably just take a couple of days off and kind of just wait for something big. But it's great to be back, and obviously we got a lot of stuff to talk about today.
Yes, we do have a lot of stuff to talk about today, and that is that Nintendo finally had a general Nintendo Direct. It wasn't a partner, it wasn't a mini, it wasn't an indie. It was a general Direct, the one that we all know and love oh so much. And we're going to talk about that Direct. We're going to talk about our game of the show, how Nintendo may have inadvertently implied a release date for one of their hotly anticipated games, and also what does Nintendo Direct means for Nintendo's marketing throughout 2021, and how this may have given us a clue as to how Nintendo is going to shape their marketing strategy for the remainder of the year. But we're going to start with our Nintendo Direct game of show, and I'm curious as to what your choice will be.
I was going to default to you and ask you to go first, but I will say, there was a couple that probably could have taken the title. There was a few things that I liked, and I know we're going to get into that here shortly, but if I had to pick one, I would say Project Triangle Strategy was my pick of the show. Although it's something that is not going to come out until 2022, there is a demo that is available that I'm actively downloading as we speak. But what I liked about it was, obviously, it was a tactical RPG. Square Enix is involved. There's definitely that Final Fantasy Tactics vibe about the game, and it looked really, really kind of compelling. So I thought for me that was probably the standout.
Yeah, I will agree with you there. Project Triangle Strategy was my game of the show. It is everything I've wanted from a tactical game, at least, based on the trailer they showed. I have the demo downloaded. I have not gotten a chance to play it yet. I will play it tonight. And I love that art style, that the Octopath Traveler look, the HD 2.5D visual style. And everything about this game is just resonating with me right now. And I'm hopeful that the gameplay of the demo is going to click with me, because I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy Tactics. This does have vibes of Tactics and Tactic Ogre.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Both made by the same developers. So we should definitely have some of that hint of both of those franchises here, and the way you could use those environments. You could burn down the house and inflict damage to things. It's a really exciting project. It is dated for 2022. That's a little disappointing that we are going to have a lengthy wait ahead of us, but I love what the Octopath Traveler team did with that game, and the fact that they've come out with a completely brand new game in a new genre has me excited. We know their pedigree, and some may get angry with this, but I found it humorous that you show a game like Project Triangle Strategy, and I understand that these are games that are going to be in two different genres, but if I'm Bravely Default, I have to feel a little embarrassed in terms of how amazing this game looks, and how Bravely Default, after two demos, kind of just felt subpar. And maybe the full game is going to be really good. We'll know in the coming weeks. We'll have reviews out very soon. We'll see if the full game is good. But man, Project Triangle Strategy just seems like that's that tactical RPG that people have wanted for such a long time, and it feels like it might have taken some of the excitement away from Bravely Default 2, but that may just be me.
I do agree somewhat with that. I also will add some caution there as well and say, what we saw of Project Triangle Strategy, and again, I haven't played the demo yet, so maybe there is some more than this, but I think ultimately this is just more of almost a, I don't want to say a proof of concept, but it's a tightly curated sandbox where you can basically play a small mission or something, and that's what they showed us. So while it did look very impressive, and I do agree with you, I love that 2.5D look about that game, and aesthetically, and the sound and the music was also something that really got me excited. I don't know how much of a game there is right now of Project Triangle Strategy in terms of, is there a story? What happens? There's lots of questions that we don't know about, and because the game does release in 2022, and look, for all we know, it could be the tail end of 2022, so it may be a while before we hear about this game again. Bravely Default is imminent, right? It's almost here, so yes. I think we should definitely, I do agree with you on Bravely Default. I do think that it did steal some of its thunder, but I also feel like we're kind of comparing a curated commercial on a Nintendo Direct with a game that's just about there. So let's kind of wait and see how that goes for Project Triangle Strategy. Very true. And now we'll go into the content of the Nintendo Direct itself. This was a 50-minute presentation, and there were a lot of announcements. There were 30 announcements in total, and I'll run through a quick list of them in order from how they listed on their press release. And one of the announcements was Splatoon 3. Yep. It's slated for 2022. They didn't particularly give out too much information here. It was a nice little teaser trailer. It showed that we are going to be in a new hub city. We're not going to be in that main area from Splatoon 2. They showed some new weapons, like a bow weapon, some customization options for your Inkling, and that there would be some new movement abilities for the 4 vs 4 turf wars. But this is obviously a game that we're probably looking at it's probably not releasing for another 16 months or so. And this is how they concluded. This is how they ended today's presentation. And, Splatoon is a very popular franchise. It is massive in Japan. It sells 3+ million units easily. Mm-hmm. So I understand why you would want to announce a game this large, but I kind of look at it and say, you guys at Nintendo, you have other software that will be coming in 2021. Did you really have to lean into a game like Splatoon 3 right now in February of 2021? Couldn't this have waited maybe until E3 time, or maybe even the second half of 2021 to start building up some anticipation for a new entry of Splatoon 3? I don't know if you had to do it right now. That's not a knock at the announcement itself or the game. It's more of the marketing strategy around it. Was this necessary this early on? And as I said, this is a game that is coming out at minimum 12 months from now. But I'd say it's much more likely we're not going to see this game release until summer. Yeah. Or early summer of 2022. So let's say the May-June timeframe. So we're looking at 16 to 17 more months. And I just wonder why now was the time they chose to highlight this new game. That's a really interesting point. I never really gave it too much thought. I think, but you're right, it is coming out in 2022, probably late summer. So there is a while to go. For me, I think, honestly, Nate, I think Nintendo, obviously, they have a lot, right? They have a lot that they haven't told us about yet. And I truly believe that, right? They still have a lot of aces up their sleeve that we will hear about during this year. But I think they were looking for that one more thing moment. And this is, I hate to say it, but this was, the best that they could kind of show us right now without obviously, breaking NDAs or ruining anything for developers, right? So I think this was the best that they had at this time. So, for me, it was a pretty good announcement, but I do question, the timing, because normally, games that come out next year is something that Sony does or Microsoft does on their shows. Nintendo usually, if they're going to announce something, it's most of the time it's pretty close, right? It's 6 months away maybe, or but this one was a little different. But I don't know. I just kind of felt like maybe this was this year's Direct. One more thing, compared to the Breath of the Wild trailer, which obviously blew everyone's socks off at the time. So, I think that's ultimately what they did here.
Now, one thing that I am curious for your thoughts on is when we see companies do this, like Microsoft had Perfect Dark at the Video Game Awards. We know that game is still a couple of years off. We know Sony does it with a lot of their projects, and that's to anticipate and build that hype for your new hardware. It's so people have something to look forward to. The Switch is established. Mm-hmm. You have Splatoon 2 on the platform already. You have nearly 80 million units sold in less than 4 years on the market. You have an established platform. Do you really need to do these teases of anticipation for things that are coming out a year plus, down the line? Or is it? I think I'm more surprised that Nintendo is bringing a full-fledged sequel to Splatoon 2 on the Switch instead of just waiting for their next generation of hardware.
Yeah, or maybe a DLC, because we've talked about Splatoon 2 DLC. So yeah, I do agree with what you're saying there. This is definitely a surprising announcement. It's a good announcement. I don't want to take it away from the announcement, because I think you're right. Splatoon is a beloved franchise. I like Splatoon. I'm a casual Splatoon player at best, but I always enjoy playing the game when I play it. I do like the announcement, but I also do question, the timing around this and the marketing around this, because you're right. This could be almost, I don't want to say 2 years, but it could be a long time before we see this game actually come out. And who knows what the landscape's going to be towards the end of next year when the game comes out, as far as what kind of hardware we'll be playing this game on. It's a very interesting point you make.
And I'm going to expand on that just a bit here. And I think you bring up a good point there, is that as we have discussed, whether it is still 2021 or slips into 2022, Nintendo is expected to introduce brand new hardware. And the question that is always encompasses this topic is Nintendo positioning it as a revision similar to a PlayStation 4 Pro, or could Nintendo be going more along the route of mobile devices of, this is our successor. We're not going to position it as a successor, because we're going to have a shared software library for, let's say, maybe 2 years. And then we're going to slowly wean away from that old hardware, and we're going to lean into this more modern hardware. And every 4 to 5 years, we're going to cycle out. Yeah. So that iterative console generation, Nintendo might be doing away with. And that's where I could see a game like Splatoon 3 being announced, because it is going to come to the Switch you currently own, but it's also going to be playable on that new Switch that will launch either later this year or early next year. Mm-hmm. You're going to get benefits either via a patch or whatever. You're going to get those enhancements, and it's going to almost, they could position Splatoon 3 very easily as a launch title.
Yes.
For that revision hardware, and you get all the bells and whistles of whatever that hardware introduces. And at the same time, by announcing it now for Switch, when that revision is announced, you kind of are saying, don't worry. Mm-hmm. If you're happy with your current Switch, you still have these games to look forward to. We're still supporting you. But we also want to make sure that our new releases are going to take advantage of that hardware. And that's the thought that crossed my mind with this announcement.
Yeah. I think that anything that's announced for 2022, you have to wonder, are they kind of aligning that date with new hardware? And you just can't rule that out with this one. You could be absolutely on the money with this. This could be a game that could launch with day and date with revision hardware. And I think anything that's 2022, you have to think about in those ways.
And I don't want to sit on this topic for too long. I'll bring it back up in the second half of this discussion. So we'll move on to the next announcement. and that's brand new Super Smash Bros. Characters. They introduced Xenoblade Chronicle 2 fighters. And we all know you're a huge Xenoblade Chronicle 2 fan.
I love the game.
What did you think of the introduction of Pyra and Mithra?
It didn't really do much for me. That's not to say that some people weren't hyped with this announcement. I think, fans of Xenoblade would be pretty excited about this. Look, I'm a casual Smash Brothers player, so I didn't really feel like it was a great addition. But I also do respect that Sakurai has introduced these characters as well. Look, compared to Sephiroth last time, which was a pretty hype announcement in anyone's book, this one did feel a little grounded, I will say. It was okay. It was okay. Was it a great way to start a Nintendo Direct? I'm not sure either on that, but it was fine. My question is, though, is this two characters, that's filling the roster? Because, we keep hearing there's only a few characters left, right? Does this count as two or just count as one?
Just counts as one. We still have two characters left to this pack that will be released before the end of this year, so we still have a couple to look forward to.
Yep. I'm still hoping for Master Chief. Don't know if it'll ever happen, though.
Master Chief would be a big announcement if that ever happens.
What did you think about Pyra and Mithra, by the way?
You know what? I enjoy Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for what it is. I'm not in love with the game. I was a far bigger fan of the first game, and Xenoblade Chronicles X. I think it's good that we had more female representation in the Smash character roster. And, these are a fine choice. More sword characters. That's what everyone wants, right? I didn't get overly excited for the announcement. It kind of felt like, oh, we're finally getting Xenoblade Chronicle 2 representation in the game. It felt like a long time coming. It just didn't, wow, it wasn't a shocking reveal. It was just good. That's how I guess.
I also think, everyone's talking about Ryu, Hayabusa, and Dante and Crash. Mm-hmm. This just, again, it just cements the fact that no one has a clue what's coming next. No one does. No. I think about the most out there pick, which is not completely insane, like Master Chief. Because Master Chief is something that I keep saying, but is it really going to happen? I probably not. I mean, let's be honest, right? But if you think a little outside the box, you got a better chance of picking who the next character might be. But I mean, this one was probably not something that a lot of people had their money on.
No, if I would have looked at recent releases or how Nintendo typically chooses first-party games if they want to market a certain product, I would have thought maybe they would have chosen the Avatar character from Ring Fit or even a new Pokemon, because we know it's Pokemon's anniversary this month. We know we're going to have a new Pokemon game at the end of this year. So I was kind of thinking a new Pokemon would have been the most recent introduction and not a character for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So it goes to show it's really tough to predict what character is going to be chosen, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's Nintendo sits down and says, well, who do fans want? What's popular? And a lot of the choices definitely feel more Japanese oriented than Western. And that's I think that's the one knock against Master Chief getting placed in Smash Brothers. It's just, does anyone in Japan really care about Master Chief?
That's a great point. I mean, you do have to wonder. And I mean, does Sakurai care about Master Chief as well? Enough to.
Right.
I mean, obviously Terry Bogard was something he was very passionate about, being someone who played Neo Geo back in the day in the arcades and everything. So you're right. It's also about how he feels about the particular character.
We then had a brand new Mario Golf game announced for Switch titled Mario Golf Super Rush. Now this is it's return to form. It's going to have a story mode where you play as your Mii character, you get experience points to power up your stats, and the trailer also introduced Speed Golf, which is you tee off and then you run down the course and you hit your next shot and you eventually get onto the green and then you putt it, and it's who can finish a game of golf fastest. very unique mode. I could see it being fun, especially in a group with friends where it's, you're probably pushing each other or you're cutting them off on the course and trying to slow their character down. Nice chaotic mode. But my focus and interest would be story mode. I hope it is very similar to what we got with the Mario Golf on the Game Boy Color. That was the best Mario Golf. And with Golf Story out there, I think Nintendo and the folks at Camelot may have felt some pressure to deliver the Mario Golf that everyone has been waiting for, and hopefully this is that answer.
I think they will. I mean, Camelot, obviously, with them at the helm, the game will be in good hands. I do think you're right. I do think they have some competition with Golf Story, and I think that they will deliver a good game for us. I like Mario Golf, and you're right. I love the earlier games that came out, so I'll definitely be checking this one out. This was, I think, Project Triangle Strategy was my pick, but this one was number 2 for me. It was a pretty good announcement.
Yeah, this was a good announcement. It's, we haven't had a Mario Golf in a while, and it's nice to see the series come back. It looks like a lot of fun. I enjoy golf games. I enjoy golfing in real life as well. So it was kind of that game of, I'll sit down and play this when it comes out in June of this year. And I'm just hopeful that they nail those multiplayer modes and that the single player is fleshed out enough that it keeps me invested and returning. Because the one thing with a golf game is a lot of the developers, they nail the mechanics.
Yeah.
And based on the trailer, it looks like they do have the mechanics down packed. That's one area that Camelot had done well. They know, how to putt, put a good putting system into place, chipping, driving, all of that. It's just the single player was always lackluster, where it was, why am I playing this?
Yeah.
And it looks like they have that figured out with the story mode. The speed mode, that can be a lot of fun, I think, with friends, especially if you can play it online. I could see, us playing it, maybe one spawn cast recording when things are slow and we're running down the fairway, trying to get to our ball first.
This is our clubhouse games for 2021.
Maybe. I'm going to have to challenge Sean to some chip and putt and see who wins so I can humiliate him on one of his live streams again. Then had Project Triangle Strategy, the Octopath developers' tactical RPG that we touched on earlier as our game of the show. And it looks fantastic. If you haven't given the demo a download, I encourage everyone to do so. Check it out for yourself. And let us know your thoughts on the demo in the comment section. We then had a surprising announcement in the form of Star Wars Hunters, a mobile game from... How do you pronounce their name? Zynga?
Zynga. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one looked... I mean, we didn't see anything of this game, but...
No.
It's
a mobile game.
This doesn't look very good. This was something that they threw into the direct at the last minute. It's... My biggest issue with the Star Wars license now that EA has lost, the exclusivity, not necessarily that they did great stuff in recent times, but they did some decent stuff. Squadrons was good, and some of the later games were pretty good. It looked like they were returning to form somewhat with the Star Wars franchise, but now that it's kind of open season on any publisher out there can get the Star Wars license and make these games, and I do wonder if that's going to have a negative effect on all these kind of shovelware Star Wars games. And look, we haven't seen Hunters, but I'm not really expecting anything great here.
Yeah, when you look at the developer pedigree, kind of not going to have high hopes here. Maybe they surprise us, but at the end of the day, I feel like this is just going to be a mobile game that was brought to the Switch. It's probably going to be loaded with microtransactions, and it's going to be... It'll have its audience for those who will enjoy the style game. I hope you do. This is just a game I look at very cautiously, and I'm not a big Star Wars fan to begin with, so it really had no appeal to me, even in the limited way that they presented it. And speaking of a limited appealing game, Nintendo decided to bring back, of all franchises, Miitopia. Now, this was a game that was on the 3DS, and it's an RPG. You use your Mii characters, you fight the Dark Lord. It's original in its own distinct way, but I'm really curious as to why, of all franchises to bring back this late into a generation, they decided to go with something like Miitopia. Did you play the 3DS game?
No, I don't even know why this is coming back. Like, let's imagine, right? We're in Nintendo of Japan's boardroom, and someone walks in with a pitch deck to bring this game back. How did this game get greenlit?
I'd say just because it's a lighthearted, casual RPG. I'd imagine it was greenlit because they said, let's make an lighthearted RPG that the children can play on their Switch Lite, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, I mean,
because
there's definitely this definitely is for kids and that demographic, and I'm definitely not knocking that. This was a weird announcement to me. Like when this was going on, I think it was like halfway through the show, I was really starting to feel like, wow, this direct is not going to be a particularly memorable one, you know.
Yeah, it was definitely an out there announcement. I was like, okay, like that's not what you're anticipating from Nintendo. Like, good on you guys for continuing to make these quirky games, but I don't think anyone had Miitopia on their bingo card for the first direct of 2021.
Right.
We then had EA finally detail the remaining 2 games for their 7-game lineup for Switch. And it is called Knockout City. It's from Velen Studios. They were also the developers of Mario Kart Live. It's Knockout City, and it is a dodgeball arena game, or as they put it, dodge brawl, where you throw, catch, pass, dodge, and tackle your way to dominance. This is one of those games that I think had Nintendo had a service like a Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live Gold, and it were free for the first month, it would build that audience. I don't know if I see people dropping money to become part of this game's social network and building a big enough community that the game remains active after those first couple of weeks. It's not because it doesn't look fun. It's just a lot to ask a person to commit to an online multiplayer game of a new IP, because you're not going to take that gamble that you could potentially hate it.
I mean, let's be real. So what's going to happen here is this game is going to get some hype. They're going to throw money at streamers and influencers to push this game and stream it, try to get that buzz. But look, this game is going to be dead on arrival like after a couple of weeks. Like, no one is going to want to play this game after that. There has to be a hook here, and it has to be a real hook, not something that was hyped up on a live stream, with an influencer that was paid to play the game. Now, if it's a scenario like Among Us, where like a few months goes by and then someone starts playing it that is predominant YouTuber or something without being paid to do so, then yeah, sure, the game may get some traction and become a big title, but the odds are very much against this game actually being anything beyond like the first month or so of its launch.
Yeah. I mean, they did say that there are going to be upcoming beta tests. They're going to have limited time events, and that's good. That way you can, we as the player can give it a try, see if it's something that interests us. But I'm just having flashbacks to Ninjala. We had beta for that. People played it.
Yeah. That's a great point.
How many people are continuing to play Ninjala since it launched?
Dude, I totally forgot about that game. I'm not making that up. I legitimately forgot about that game until you mentioned it again. You're right. Absolutely right.
And that's like, I know it sounds like we're being hard on this game. It's more of that's just the nature of the industry and the current environment of the industry is that you really need to have something unique to stand out. And when we have so many of these arena-based multiplayer games, be it Fall Guys, which was announced for Switch in the Direct, Rocket League, you have to compete against those games. And you're also competing against, especially on a Nintendo platform, Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers. That's a lot of competition. And I do hope the development team find success with Knockout City. I hope it works out well for them. And, you know, when the beta is announced and it is available, I will be online playing it. And I hope it impresses me enough that I can convince myself to purchase this game, but it's definitely going to be a challenge. And ironically enough, the next game on the list was Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout. It's going to come to Switch this summer, and I never played it on the PlayStation 4. I didn't have PlayStation Plus when it launched, so I never gave it a try. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the Fall Guys hype has kind of diminished.
Yep, I never played the game either, but I mean, look around, right? No one's talking about this game anymore. What should have happened here, and look, there's always a lot of forces at play that may not make this possible, but what should have happened in a perfect world, in a vacuum, is that this game should have been developed for the Switch at the same time as the mainline PC version that made them successful, and it should have come out not necessarily day and date, but around day and date of that original game. And I think they would have definitely reaped the rewards of you know, the success that game had. Unfortunately, it's a cool announcement, and you know, it's great that it's coming out on the Switch. I may check it out, but it's just too late. Like, it's too little, too late. I think they just missed their window on this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to find success for kind of like the Knockout City. I could see it have 1 to 3 months of success on the Switch, because I think some people are going to get back into it. We all know our good friend Sean from RGT85. Despite his lies of him not playing Fall Guys when it comes to Switch, we know he's going to give it a download. He's going to be playing it. And I could see that give it maybe that second spark, a second wind, if you will.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how long is that second wind going to last until the dying gasp. It could be a few months.
Well,
we'll find out when it launches this summer.
I will tell you that the online has to be flawless, because if it's not, even if it's spotty for the first week, and then they're like, we got a patch coming to fix it, that may be too late. So everything is against this game being successful long term. So they have to make sure that this is an ultimate knockout, literally, for it to do well.
Absolutely. We then have, this was an interesting release. Nintendo is publishing it. It is DC Superhero Girls Teen Power. Now, if you remember, Nintendo has previously published a Marvel game with Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Mm-hmm. And now they're publishing a DC superhero game, and I know nothing about DC Superhero Girls Teen Power. I don't watch Cartoon Network anymore. I don't have children. But from what I've heard from friends, this is a very popular TV show, and that this game has great potential to sell really well for the platform when it comes out on June 4th. Based on the footage shown, it looks like a neat little superhero game, especially, it's designed for children and young teens, I'd say. I simply don't know enough about the franchise to really comment on it beyond this. It looks like it'll probably be fun for fans of this particular franchise, though.
I don't know anything about this game, and when they showed this, I didn't really think much of it. I mean, it's definitely not a game for me, right? I mean, I think, to your point, there's definitely an audience here that will really enjoy this game, but nothing that I'm interested in.
Now, these two games are something that have my interest, and it's because this franchise has never come to North America before. This is the first time they are translated, and it is Famicom Detective Club, The Missing Heir, and Famicom Detective Club, The Girl Who Stands Behind. And the animation in this game looks amazing. The character design, everything about it looks fantastic. And they come out in May, and I wish they were having a retail release with both games on a single cart, because this is that type of game I want to have a physical copy of, and it just looks like a really good visual novel.
Yeah, definitely the biggest surprise of the Direct for me was Famicom Detective Club. I'm all over this game when it comes out. I was very, very excited about this when they announced it. And this was pretty early on in the show, and I was getting pretty hyped about it. I do agree with you. I want to see it physical. I don't want Nintendo to do the same thing where, once the Switch goes away, this game gets lost again. Or this game gets lost as a digital release that never got a physical. So hopefully, this will do well, and they'll get us a physical of it at some point. But either way, exciting announcement, and one I'm definitely going to check out.
Yeah, I really like the visual style on display. I like the way the characters were animated. The music has that nice classic feel to it. I'm really excited for this release, and definitely one of the key surprises of the General Direct today. Then had EA date their final Switch game, and it's Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville Complete Edition. Now, this is something we've talked about a bit over the last year or so, implying that the game was coming to Switch. And I'd say the most exciting part of this release isn't even the game itself. It's that EA actually had to get Frostbite running on the Switch.
Yep.
And this was an engine that I remember when the NX was still prototyped and just known as NX, you had developers laugh at the idea of Frostbite being able to run on the platform. But it's amazing when a platform has 80 million install base and you are a publisher looking to make money at what you can make happen with an engine when you really put your mind and money to work. And, this is a game that's been out now for, I believe, well over a year now on other platforms. It's a multiplayer shooting game where you can play as plants or zombies. It's probably another one of those games that's probably going to struggle a bit to find a base on the Nintendo Switch. I'm sure it'll have a dedicated small community. I'll check it out. I'm just curious to see how well they got the engine running on the platform.
Yeah.
I don't believe this means Madden or Battlefield or anything else that's running on the Frostbite engine is going to come to Switch all of a sudden. I think this was kind of a one-off deal, and I believe the developers that they employed to make this port become reality was Q-Lock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I'll probably check it out only because I'm interested in the engine. I'd like to see Digital Foundry do an analysis of this as well. But I think one thing we should keep in mind is, even though it's Frostbite, what's missing? Like, is it really Frostbite as in the complete thing, which means that other things can now be ported, or is it Frostbite Lite that was developed or was made available so this game could come to the Switch, if that makes sense? So I think we'll definitely learn more about that as we go. But look, if they do have Frostbite as in the full bells and whistles engine running on the Switch, that's a pretty big achievement, and hopefully it's not the last that we see of it.
Yeah, it's something you'd be curious to see if we do end up with any other Frostbite engine games on the platform. But when you look at that lineup from EA that uses this engine, I believe it was Mass Effect Andromeda used Frostbite.
Yep.
Madden uses it. Battlefield, I believe FIFA also transitioned to it. EA is still so weird with the Switch platform and what they bring to it. I don't know if this engine is going to be enough for them to say, "Oh, let's commit to the Switch." Maybe the next Switch, or maybe the revision, will be when EA really notices that they can make money on the platform, and now they have the power to make ports more readily available. But with the current Switch, I just don't see EA's support changing anytime soon.
You do wonder if that's what they're planning, getting Frostbite on the Switch, not necessarily taking advantage of it, but having it available as that wild card up their sleeve when the Switch Pro comes out.
Yeah, almost like this was their beta test. They said, let's see how we can get it running, how well it works. Like, oh, we got it well enough, we can put this game on. Like, okay, let's do that. And now we have that working base. So when we do have that, Switch Pro, the revision, come out, we know it works. We now have better tools. We have more hardware power. Now it's going to open new doors for us to maybe bring Madden to a Nintendo system again. But, companies do all that. They do that type of experimentation all the time. You just never really notice it until after the fact. They then had Legend of Mana announced by Square Enix. This is fully remastered HD graphics. It's coming out June 24th. I have not played a Legend of Mana game or in that franchise in a long time. So I'd say this announcement got me curious. I'm interested, but I'm not convinced yet.
I'm low key excited about this. I'm keeping my hype levels, at a good level, I guess. I think this could be really good, but I also want to make sure that they put the appropriate amount of work into this game, because if you go back and play an old game from that era, they're quite rough around the edges. So hopefully they'll fix it up in the places that it needs to. But the presentation of the game looked good. It definitely got my interest. I like the HD graphics that they remastered. There's rearranged music. I'll definitely check it out when it comes out.
Yeah, I believe the last Mana game I played, I got the Mana collection that came to Switch a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I mean, that was a nice little compilation. So this one will be on my radar. I don't know if I'd pick it up at launch. It might be one of those games I wait for it to, get on sale.
Yeah.
Just because there's a lot of exciting releases this year. Something unfortunately has to fall by the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
You then had Outer Wilds. Now this was a game that was highly talked about a couple of years ago when it released on other platforms. It's finally making its way to the Switch this summer. It is a very well-renowned indie game. You go through space, you're in a space program, you're searching for answers in a solar system. You explore the remnants of extinct civilizations. Have you played Outer Wilds at all?
No, I've heard great things about this game, and I will say that I may pick it up and check it out. I mean, if I'm going to play it, I'm going to play it on the Switch, and if this game is as good as what I keep hearing about, I may take a look at it. It definitely got me interested when I saw the announcement that maybe it's time for me to actually check this game out, because it keeps coming up as a game every so often that just keeps being talked about. So hey, if it's coming to the Switch, I'll probably take a look at it.
Yeah, I remember when it was first coming out, everyone was confusing the Outer Wilds with the Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
Like, out of all the words to pick, they had to choose two names so close related. Then had Samurai Warrior 5. Now this is a long-running franchise. I enjoy these type of games. I like just destroying things and killing everyone in these large-scale battles. And I have to say, Samurai Warriors 5, visually, it looks really good. The character models look nice and clean. They have a nice visual style to them. And
yeah,
this has my interest, but it's still one of those games. I don't know if I'd buy it at launch. Nice announcement. It's probably going to sell really well in Japan. In the West, you never really know how a Samurai Warrior game will sell. Then we had World's End Club. This game was from the creators of Danganronpa and Zero Escape, so it's going to be all sorts of weird. Yeah, this isn't. I think it's a good announcement. It's just nothing that I'm going to be too invested in.
Yeah, honestly, I'm drawing a blank about what this game was, but now that I'm looking at the PR article, I do remember it. Nothing really that I'm too interested in.
Yeah, the characters kind of look like a bunch of unused Pokemon trainers in terms of character design.
Right.
I mean, there is a legion of fans who enjoy this style of game, and this is probably the game you've been waiting for. It's just nothing that really clicked with me, which is okay. That's what this directed well. It had a wide range of software.
Absolutely.
And then we had Animal Crossing New Horizons with Super Mario Brothers 35th anniversary items. I still don't have Animal Crossing New Horizons, so
I've played maybe 4 hours of the game. Look, good announcement, especially if you are still invested in Animal Crossing. If I was playing that game, I'd be pretty hyped about this one. It was good to see that they announced this. If you're a fan of that game, then I think you'll get some enjoyment from this one for sure.
We finally have a release date for No More Heroes 3.
We do.
Travis Touchdown will be coming to Switch on August 27th. And they gave us a better idea of what the game is actually about, and it's you fight aliens. And I have to say, No More Heroes 3, based on the footage in the presentation, it doesn't look all that hot on a visual level.
I got to agree with you on this one. Like, maybe I was expecting something else, but I didn't think the visuals kind of landed. I mean, I know there's a certain art style about those games, but there was just something a little off about the graphical style in this game, and I'm glad it wasn't just me that felt that way. I'm definitely not knocking the game. I want to play it. I love No More Heroes 1 and 2. I'll be picking it up, but it does make you wonder, this game has been in development for a long time. You could almost say it's been in development hell. You know what I mean? Like, there's been a lot of talk about this game for years. And you do wonder, why isn't the graphical style improved, or why isn't it what we expect? But hey, once again, I'll probably reserve final judgment when the game's close to coming out.
And, I think it's fair for people to have some hesitation when it comes to the visuals of this game, because when the No More Heroes Travis Strikes Again came to Switch, it was riddled with performance problems.
Yeah.
And I know that was a smaller budget game, and hopefully No More Heroes 3 manages to avoid those type of performance issues. But I mean, I don't think it's wrong for anyone to be a little on the cautious side here of, is this game going to perform well when it does launch later this summer? Some of it is definitely just the visual style of the game. It's probably never going to be a franchise that's, wow, look at those visuals. It's always going to have that weird aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
And it just looked a little less than I was expecting. And maybe it's intentional, maybe it's something in the game itself that will explain why it looks this way, but it wasn't looking too hot. Mm-hmm. But we are many months away. We're 6 months away from release. A lot can change in 6 months. It then had an indie game known as Neon White, where you fight demons in heaven. You pick up cards, and it's first person. It was a very fast-moving thing. It's from the creator of Donut County. I never played Donut County. It's coming out this winter. I have a feeling we'll be seeing this game again sometime in 2021. I really don't know what to think of the game right now.
I didn't think much of it. I thought this was another title that just kind of filled out the numbers on the Direct.
Ooh. It then had Tales from the Borderlands. Now, this game is many years old, and it's finally coming to a Nintendo platform. It'll be available on March 24th. All I'd say is, if you've never played the game before, I would encourage you to do it. It has really good writing. The story is well told. Mm-hmm. The characters are well crafted. Yeah, that's pretty much it about that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
It then had Stubs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse.
Yes. Now we're getting somewhere.
Now this one comes out March 16th, and is a curious fact about this game. It was made using the Halo engine.
That is correct. I think Aspire's doing the game.
Yes.
I like Stubs the Zombie back in the game, and look, I always welcome when an old franchise comes back, to recent times, and I'll definitely check it out. Look, do I have reservations? Yes, because I mean, some games, even though there's a lot of romance and nostalgia, sometimes they don't always translate very well to modern times. But I'll definitely check it out.
It then had leaked a few months ago on a ratings board, and I believe a retailer had put up this collection. But it is the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. This is also coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox, and PC, but it's also coming to Switch on June 10th. And it is Ninja Gaiden Sigma, Sigma 2, and Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. Now, Ninja Gaiden 1 and Ninja Gaiden Black are two of the greatest games ever made.
Yes.
The Sigma version, it's different.
Yep.
This was the version the PlayStation 3 got because Microsoft, they own Ninja Gaiden Black. They published it when it came to the original Xbox. And Sigma, they just changed some things. And generally speaking, not for the better. It's still an excellent game. This is a quality collection, and
Yeah.
I had played Ninja Gaiden Sigma on PlayStation 3. I also played it when they brought Sigma 1 and 2 to the PlayStation Vita. And those were good ports.
I'm cautiously looking forward to this one. Like everything you said, I agree with. I do think that the Sigma series is, the I guess, the B team, if you will, to Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden Black on the original Xbox, which were just masterpieces, right? But it's still Ninja Gaiden, and I love the games. I love the swordplay. Here's my reservations about this game. It has to be, and I mean has to be, locked 60 FPS without fail, because this game, you're right, came out on the PS3 and it was good. It had frame rate issues. They also brought it out, if you recall, on the Nintendo Wii U. One of the Sigma games came out, and I have that.
Yeah, Razor's Edge.
Razor's Edge. And I love that too. But that also has frame rate issues. This has to be 60 FPS. If it has the same frame rate dips as the other games, and I hate to say it, but it's just more of a port than, they've actually taken the time to optimize and make it take advantage of the Switch's hardware and the cores and everything, I'm going to be disappointed. But this was one that I definitely have my eye on for sure.
Yeah, it definitely has my interest, because I do love the Ninja Gaiden series. I love Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2. Even though these are the Sigma versions, it's not like they are horrifically bad versions. They're good versions of great games.
Yeah.
They're just not the original vision of the creator. This was a different director, and there were some slight changes here and there. Razor's Edge is a game I have a very complex relationship with. It's a bad Ninja Gaiden game. Mm-hmm. The weird corruption aspect, there's just a lot of flaws in the game, especially from a narrative standpoint and even in gameplay. It's still a good action game.
I think at that point, I kind of just forgot about, the lore of Ninja Gaiden, and I just kind of felt like it was more of a Devil May Cry type deal at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. It was a fun, dumb action / game. You just happen to be Hayabusa. Like, Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 are just fantastic.
I do agree with you, though. Like, they took what made Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden Black, masterpieces, and just kind of threw them all away and rewrote the rulebook almost.
Yeah, it's still a nice collection. It's good to see Nintendo get more Ninja Gaiden games. I mean, Ninja Gaiden was born on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yes.
And to see it come back to Switch with this trilogy is nice. Hopefully, this is a sign of things to come, that Team Ninja is working on a brand new original Ninja Gaiden game, because we haven't had one since, was it Yaba?
Yeah. That's been a while.
Yeah,
which I like, by the way, but I know it didn't get great reviews. I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was like, amazing, but when I started playing it, I just had that feeling again that here we go. This is another one of those games that they've nailed the combat and the controls, but I definitely get why people don't like Yaba very much.
Then had Saga Frontier Remastered. Now, this was announced a couple of months ago, but it was dated for April 15th.
What's up with this game? Did you see the graphics on this game? Was it me, or did it look like someone just hand drew them with a pencil or something? And I don't mean that in a good way.
The visuals aren't great. They're not great.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing with this weird HD sprite style. It looks like they just dropped these character sprites on a background image and said, here we go. It reminds me of their mobile games that always look awful.
Yeah, I expected
that's
more
what I'm
of this one.
Here. I really don't like the visual style here. Unfortunately, Saga Frontier it's a great game, but I can't play it the way this new release looks. I'd rather have the original just, I can't look at this game. This game just looks bad.
I think, and I don't want to talk about pixel graphics and stuff, but like a lot of these games, for whatever reason, just shy away from the original pixelated artwork, and they kind of retouch them either using shaders or maybe they actually have an artist actually redo the graphics or whatever. My response to that is, don't. Like, pixel artwork is some of the best that you'll ever experience in video games. There's an art form to drawing those graphics. So why would you mess those up? Unless you're making new assets for a new game, then think about maybe just leaving them the way they are, or at least just touching them up, ever so slightly. But basically, kind of, putting a Vaseline layer over the top of everything and making it look the way it does is never going to get my thumbs up.
No, there's something about the character look, the whole art style. I almost say it's too clean.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't like it. And I'm sure it's something that maybe would grow on me over time, but it's reminding me kind of why I'm not a big fan of Bravely Default's visual style. Of everything about Bravely Default, you look at the outfits.
Yeah.
They look amazing. It's the faces. It's this doll type face. And it doesn't match the rest of what, the visual look of the game. So I'm looking at this sterile, lifeless face in Bravely Default. And I can't look. It's jarring. I can't look beyond that, and it's disconnecting from the rest of the game. And with Saga Frontier, it reminds me of those mobile games that they've put out, of the Final Fantasy games, or even the Dragon Quest games, where it takes away all that atmosphere and general feel that those games had delivered in the original pixel art, and it's just erased because they wanted to make it so clean looking that you erased what was great about it. You got rid of that whole atmospheric feel. So
I think it comes down to budgets at the end of the day.
This is it's probably a very cheap project.
Right.
Now, there were a couple of announcements that we left out of that list, and that was intentional. And one of those is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is getting downloadable content, and it's coming in 2 waves of DLC. The first wave will be available in June. The second one will come out in November. And they really didn't give us a lot of information as to what this DLC would be beyond it costs $20 and coming out in the aforementioned months. I'm not surprised that Age of Calamity is getting DLC. This is very typical marketing and industry standard for a Muso style game. Will you be picking up an expansion pack?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm interested in what they're going to ultimately show us, but I've always felt like Age of Calamity was a game for me that I would play for maybe 4 to 10 hours and then just put it away. You know what I mean? It's not something that I'm looking at revisiting anytime soon. I think this year will be there should be a lot of big releases that come out, and I don't necessarily just mean Nintendo. Obviously, Sony will have Ratchet and Clank and other games are coming, so I'm probably not going to get this.
Yeah, I'm unsure. Whenever it comes to DLC expansion packs, I need to see the content that I'm paying for. I don't want to just blindly hand you $20 in hopes that you give me good content, because I did that with Breath of the Wild 1. I bought that DLC. It was like, oh, it's $20. They're going to give us story content. It'll be good. And it was really nothing that special.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I would say I got $20 worth of content out of that pack.
I think that was the last Nintendo DLC that I ever bought, was Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. And the worst part is I knew better than to do it, but I gave Nintendo the benefit of the doubt. I was like, oh, they'll do it right. And the first time I got burned is I bought a map pack for Gears of War 2. I was like, oh, this will be awesome. The maps were slow to come out. They weren't that good. I was like, I'm never buying DLC ahead of time until I know exactly what I'm getting. Like, I need to see the maps I'm buying. So this is just another case of I need to see what I'm buying. If it's good content, what's the harm in me waiting and picking it up in November?
Yeah.
it's still going to be $20. It's not like there's an incentive to buy it early. And, I'm fine with waiting here. But there was another Zelda announcement. And I think this announcement told us more than Nintendo meant it to. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD is coming to the Nintendo Switch on July 16th. There will be a Skyward Sword HD themed Joy-Con, which will be released separately on the same day. It has a Master Sword and a Hylian shield motif. And this is actually releasing earlier than I had anticipated. I thought we would have seen Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD release first. And then we would have got Skyward Sword a little later. But Nintendo does what Nintendo does. And they threw a curveball here. So, will you pick up Skyward Sword HD?
Probably not. If I do pick it up, it'll just be purely to look at it from a technical standpoint, which I may well do. It will run at 60 FPS, and there is, some enhancements that are coming for the game. But I wasn't particularly a big fan of Skyward Sword, and I do agree with you. It was a little bit of a puzzling announcement that this would be what they would open up their account with as far as, Zelda's anniversary this year. But I also wonder now, in hindsight, wondering, well, it feels like to me that Nintendo have had this game in their back pocket as one of those games that they've brought out, almost, I don't want to say to fill a void, but maybe that is true, and we'll talk about Breath of the Wild 2 here shortly. But you do wonder, if they did bring this game out, or if they are announcing this game to, fill a bit of a void in the 35th anniversary of Zelda, and then later this year with the collection, which we still believe is going to be Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, and possibly a third game, right?
Yes.
Because now we know, obviously, that Breath of the Wild 2 is not happening this year. So going back to Skyward Sword, I know we want to talk about this for a little bit. It was a weird announcement, but nothing really surprises us with Nintendo anymore. We heard we were going to get Zelda, and look, we got Zelda, but this is what we got. So what did you think about how it all played out?
What's curious is I'm re-watching the segment, and they don't mention anything about the Zelda anniversary around this game.
Yeah.
It's not branded as a 35th anniversary release.
I think it's intentional, right?
I think it's intentional as well, because they want to announce this before they really begin that celebration, which I believe will begin after Mario's concludes at the end of March. And that's where I still believe a Zelda collection is coming. I believe it will be, as you mentioned, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker HD, and something else, maybe the N64 games. Nothing outrageous. Nothing like, you have people out there saying, oh, it's going to be the CDI games. It's going to be every single Game Boy game. And
I wish it was the CDI games. Wouldn't that be cool if they brought that?
No, those can be forgotten to the dark realm.
No, we must preserve them. We must preserve them, mate.
But Skyward Sword, I liked the game for what it was in 2011. This is not a game I'm going to replay on the Switch in 2021, and I'll tell you why. Based on what they've said so far, yes, they've improved the frame rate. Yes, they've improved the graphics. It's an enhanced version, 60 frames a second. You can now play it without motion controls. Motion controls were never my problem with this game. My problem with Skyward Sword was the pacing. The game had atrocious pacing. The game is a collectathon at the end. It has great dungeons, but for every area it does something great, there are two spots it does something subpar, and it really detracts from that experience. And this is just not a game I'm ready to revisit. It came out 10 years ago. Maybe I need to wait 15.
It's the Mario Sunshine of the Zelda collection. Let's be honest.
Wow. Wow. You said it, not me. I want that on the record.
You can quote me on that. Look, I agree with you. I don't particularly care for the game. It's nowhere near, their best work in the Legend of Zelda, series.
No. And
there's definitely some things to like about it. And look, I also want to be very clear that any game that gets brought forward, I appreciate and I respect. It doesn't matter what it is. I love that Nintendo's doing this, but I also am probably not going to play this game again. Because I agree with you. I did not enjoy playing it the first time around.
No, it's like it has some good music. Like that intro music that they played in the trailer for the Direct. I love that theme for Skyward Sword. I think that's a fantastic musical track. I think Groose is a nice comic relief character. But they need to change a lot of stuff of this game, like not interrupting you every 10 seconds so Fee can tell you, this is a coin.
Yeah.
Coins are worth money. You hit A to open this chest. Like, I know. I've been playing you for 15 hours. I understand how to play the game. You have to remove all of that. You have to remove the collectathon in the second half of the game or speed it up like you did with Wind Waker HD. You have to change all of these elements. Maybe they did. We just don't know it yet.
I hope so.
That's my hope.
I hope they do give it some quality of life improvements. And
yes, it needs it.
Beyond the motion control stuff, and hopefully they will. And look, if they do that, my biggest thing about this game is if it's just a straight port with better controls, then I'm not interested. But if they actually put some time into it and add some quality of life improvements that do make the game better and make the game more playable and less annoying, then I'll probably take another look at it and give another opinion on the game.
Yeah, I just have a hard time getting excited for Skyward Sword. I know there's a lot of people out there who love it. There's an equal amount of people who hate it. I would have been more excited to revisit Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD first. And one thing that stood out to me in this Direct, I found it funny, is how Ainuma is standing there and he's like, hey, you know that stuff you liked in Breath of the Wild, like the meter when you're climbing?
Right.
That was in Skyward Sword too. Like, please buy our game. Like, your marketing for Skyward Sword is literally some of the stuff that's in Breath of the Wild we introduced here. Would you please buy it? Like, you introduced a stamina meter. Calm down, man. I'm not going to buy Skyward Sword so I can experience the stamina meter. And that was funny, the way just how the delivery went. I was like, okay, but it is interesting just how they didn't slap on any 35th with this. But as you brought up earlier, this game's coming out in July 16th.
Yep.
And right before this game was introduced, Nintendo was very forthcoming with information regarding Breath of the Wild 2. Said, we don't have news for you today. We'll have news later this year. And I think that said everything they had to say.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild 2 is not a 2021 release.
Yep.
I really don't see any way that it can be at this point. You'd want a large marketing campaign behind it. And I think we're looking at a March 2022 release. And this is going to bring me back to my Splatoon 3 point. How did Switch launch in those first 6 months? Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2. Why are these pieces falling into place for 2022 with these games all of a sudden? This is indicating to me maybe the Switch revision is going to come in 2022, as we have speculated. It's going to launch with Breath of the Wild 2, and you're going to have Splatoon 3 within that first, the launch window again. Because I believe Splatoon 2 came out in July. What if they're looking to replicate this as close as they can, which, if they are, and the fact that we do have Splatoon 3, is it really all that outlandish to possibly think that a Mario Kart 9 is around the corner?
No, I think you're onto something there. 2022 feels like basically not a relaunch, but a launch of the new revision of the hardware based on the same kind of marketing as they had last time around. It's very clever, and it makes a lot of sense, that they would do that. So, and I do agree that, when Anuma-san was on the Direct, even before he started talking, you knew what he was going to say before it even happened, because we were still 20 minutes away from the Direct ending. So Breath of the Wild 2 was not the big one more thing at the end, right? So you just knew something was going on, but maybe he was going to talk about the 35th anniversary, but you also knew that he was going to talk about Breath of the Wild 2 and where it is at the moment. And yes, everything that was interpreted, at least for me, was this game is not coming out. We'll tell you more about it later on this year, which will just be another update. But yes, the game most likely will be coming out next year, and most likely with new hardware, coinciding it.
Now, like the Switch revision, it doesn't have to launch with Breath of the Wild 2. That's just our speculation that it would make sense to launch the new hardware with a high, end release like a Breath of the Wild 2. It just makes sense to pair hardware with such a product. And with those statements today, I don't know how anyone's really walking out of that Direct feeling like Breath of the Wild 2 is coming in 2021, because Nintendo could do a 6-month marketing blitz. They could announce Breath of the Wild 2 for 2021 in June and have it land in November. They could make that happen. But then we have the Age of Calamity DLC coming out in November. Would you really have that DLC dropping with a brand new Zelda game at the same time? I'd say no.
No.
Everything points to Breath of the Wild being 2022. And remember, as far as we can officially tell, because they have made no mention of it, we have not begun the celebration of the 35th anniversary of Zelda. We are still anticipating a Zelda collection. We know the first release now is July.
Yeah.
So when do you put Twilight Princess, Wind Waker HD, the Zelda collection out? You would probably now position it second half of September, maybe October.
Yeah.
There's no time for this year to have Breath of the Wild 2 if it plays out the way we are saying. Now, you could flip this, and I guess you put Breath of the Wild 2 in late November, early December, and you have the Zelda collection finish out the fiscal year this time next year. You could also do that. I don't see that unraveling that way. I think Breath of the Wild 2, we can safely conclude, is now a 2022 release. We can't say delayed. Nintendo never dated it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, very, very clever on their part to do that. Look, I think the way this is going to play out is he wasn't lying when he said, we'll update you later this year. But I think later this year's update will most likely be a trailer with a date, right, for 2022, right? So I think that's how this is going to play out. There is no way that this game is coming out this year. They have to. I mean, your scenario, your kind of alternative scenario where they do bring it out this year. I don't know, man. Like, it just doesn't feel right to me that's going to happen at all. I mean, I feel like if we were going to see something dated for Breath of the Wild for 2021, it needed to happen in today's Direct. Now, look. Someone could turn around and say, look, it's Nintendo. They could drop a Zelda Direct, in the middle of the year and date Breath of the Wild for the end of the year. And you'd be absolutely right. They could easily do that. But I just don't feel like it's a game that's coming this year based on Aonuma-san on the Direct today.
Yeah, those statements definitely just indicated to me that the game is not coming out this year.
Because they could have just dropped a trailer and had 2021 on there, and people would have gone nuts. That would have been a hype announcement. Holy shit, Breath of the Wild 2 is coming in 2021. Let's get ready, right? Like, that's all it takes. Like, you don't even have to put a month on there. Just put a year on there. That's where we're at with this game. And the fact that they didn't commit to that today just tells me that it's not a 2021 game. Right, and that's where that Splatoon 3 to end the show kind of comes into play. We don't have something ready for Breath of the Wild 2 right now.
whether it's because we don't want to announce it for 2022 this early on, especially because we want to do that celebration. We still want to make you think you have that chance.
Yep.
Let's throw in a brand new Splatoon game to get people excited, and we can kind of pivot so you're not too disappointed. And look, we have Skyward Sword and blue Joy-Cons with shield and sword motifs. And we probably will get a Zelda Direct in, the coming weeks or months, where they will detail in full how they're going to celebrate Zelda throughout the year. Typically, Nintendo used E3 to begin the Zelda anniversary celebrations. With Zelda's 25th, it was E3. So we might be looking at a June Direct, where we really get the details of how Nintendo is going to push Zelda over the 8 months that follow. Mm-hmm. And that's a topic I want to get into really quick here. We have a general Direct in February. Now, this encompassed games pretty much up to August, some 2022 games, as we mentioned. But indies aside and game-specific Directs aside, like the Pokemon Direct, those are excluded. I'm strictly talking about a general, partner, and mini. Mm-hmm. I don't think we get any of those three again until June.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there was a lot here, right? There was 50 minutes and 30 games. It felt like we're going to show you this today because we're not going to be back for another 6 months, which that's kind of how I felt like. They went through a lot of stuff today. I mean, they could have easily cut this in half, right, and showed us something today and then showed us something in April, for example. You know what I mean? But the fact that they chose to pretty much, I mean, they talked about the first half of the year, but there was a lot of stuff that was beyond the first half of this year, right? So, yes, I agree. This general Direct is one that, we're not going to see probably for another, 5 months or so.
Yeah, like I could see an indie coming up. We typically have an indie in March, but that was when GDC and PAX East took place around that time. So maybe Nintendo won't limit themselves to March. They could wait a little longer if they decide to. And we know we have a Pokemon presentation coming up next week with the anniversary date arrival. You could have a Zelda specific Direct between now and June as well. But just in terms of a partner or a bigger Direct, I think the next one would be around June. Typically when E3 does take place, and we know the ESA wants to do a digital E3, and, a digital E3 really doesn't mean much for Nintendo. Nintendo did not participate in E3 festivities outside of having a booth. Their Direct that they aired just happened to correspond to the week of E3. That has nothing to do with the ESA. So Nintendo could do that on their own again if they want this year. Then they may. I think that's the next time we really hear from Nintendo in a meaningful way, because they now have to, detail what's coming out beyond August. It's Metroid's anniversary. It's Donkey Kong's anniversary. Surely we have something from those two franchises coming up this year. As we've talked about a 2D Metroid Prime trilogy. I'm sure we do get a Metroid game this year. And I think that's one part that Splatoon 3 kind of annoys me, is if you have a 2D Metroid coming out this year, even if it's October, why not have that game in this showcase in place of Splatoon 3? Give a game that's coming out in 2021 that spotlight over a game that is still 16 months from release. Yeah,
it does make you wonder the thought process there. It is nitpicking, and look, it's very hard to question Nintendo's marketing because they've been so good at it for such a long time. But I do agree with you that why show something that is clearly not coming out for a while versus something that should be coming out this year. But I mean, it's all about the hype and the marketing at the end of the day. Maybe they felt like now isn't the appropriate time to show Metroid off, even though, we've literally been waiting years and years and years for something, some bite, other than a PNG that they showed, a couple of years ago. But I do think that there will be another Direct probably. Yeah, I mean, around the time of E3 this year, I think we'll see another one. But I wouldn't expect them, that this whole we need a direct this month type of thing. I wouldn't expect to see that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how long this direct took to actually put together.
I feel like it took them ages because, I mean, it was 30 games. Yeah. So imagine getting 30 different trailers, imagine getting a whole bunch of trailers and then curating those and paring them down to 30, and then having the voiceover guy, speak his lines, and then getting Anuma-san to record his. Yeah, I mean, dude, this was something that you could almost tell took a long time to mount just by watching it. It was a mammoth direct, and I think it took them a while to put together.
This was probably a direct that they began production of late last year.
I agree. Yeah.
When you look at some of the announcements in it, like we had Apex Legends. You had Apex Legends in this, but last week you announced Apex Legends for the Switch. Kind of feels like you put this together way before you knew EA was just going to announce the game on its own. You thought you were going to have it first, because otherwise you really didn't need to have it here. Even some of the other inclusions like Ghosts and Goblins, the week before it comes out.
Yep.
Or like some of that stuff kind of felt like maybe they were planning something else with certain announcements and they just threw it into this direct to make a bigger show. And hey, it worked out for them. You had a 50-minute presentation. I believe this is one of the longest directs in recent memory. So it definitely got the fans excited. There was a lot happening here. Whether or not Nintendo wanted to kind of give us an indication that Breath of the Wild 2 may not be this year by giving us that Skyward Sword announcement, that remains to be seen. But what are your overall thoughts for the direct itself?
Well, I was going to ask you, but I'll go first. Look, I know that, we went through a lot of stuff and we were critical of some things, but overall, I thought the direct was fine. It was not, top tier by any stretch of the imagination. I thought it was a good show in that because there was so much stuff, there was something for everyone. Like every person that watched that direct would have walked away today feeling like, yeah, I'm into that game, or I'm into Mario Golf, or I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to pick that up. There was probably about 4 or 5 titles that I'm very interested in checking out. And look, I can't really ask for anything more. Like if I come away from a direct feeling good about a couple of games, or 3 or 4 games, then I'm pretty happy. Look, overall, it was not their best, not by a long shot. I'd probably give it a 7.5 out of 10 for my score. What are your thoughts?
I like the way that they had announcements that appealed to both the casual and core gamer. I think the one area that worked against them is it had been a year and a half since the last General Direct. And when you come out and you make the tweet, we're having a Nintendo Direct tomorrow, 50 minutes long, February, Zelda's birthday month.
Yeah.
You're on the precipice of the 35th anniversary. You have such high expectation. And you could see some of the prediction videos out there where people are anticipating Metroid, Zelda, F-Zero, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Bayonetta 3. And it was, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's, reverse course here a little bit. Let's calm some of these expectations. It's good to have high hopes, but there's a difference between a prediction and a wish. And a lot of people make wish lists when it comes to those predictions. And what we ended up getting was overall a solid show. We've talked about the surprises with Famicom Club, or the Octopath.
Yeah, Project Triangle.
Yeah, Project Triangle. A lot of the remainder of the game was, that's a nice release. Oh, cool. That's nice to see that get ported over. I'd say a lot of the show wasn't impactful. A lot of quality, but not a lot of high impact.
Yeah.
Outside of, 2 or 3 things. Mario Golf, very good announcement. It will sell well. It's something fans have been waiting for. It needed that one more touch. Like, I don't think Skyward Sword was that boom moment. I wouldn't even say Splatoon 3 was a whoa moment. We know a new Splatoon is going to be made. Nintendo hinted at another Splatoon last year with the SOS image. I believe that this game was probably supposed to be announced already. It simply got delayed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that teaser art really doesn't make any sense from last year because nothing else happened. So what was the point of that artwork? And, that could have been the case here. Splatoon 3, really nice announcement, but I don't think it had the whoa impact that you've become accustomed to with a Nintendo Direct. And I also think everyone had their hopes set on Breath of the Wild 2. When that's absent, it immediately deflates the energy of the show a bit. And I do think had you concluded the show with a 2D Metroid, I think that would have been the, yo, look at that, yes, moment that people were looking for. So overall, good show. I'd probably settle in around, I think it's 7.5.
Yeah, I think that's fair, to say that. It definitely was missing something, like you said, the high impact announcement, that real hype announcement. And look, we don't really know what was going on with this. Maybe there was something that was supposed to show, or maybe Breath of the Wild 2 did have a trailer that was pulled at the last minute, and they put Splatoon in at the end. There's a lot of things that we obviously don't know about how this one went, but look, at the end of the day, there was enough here, because there was literally 30 titles, that you had to be satisfied with something. That if you didn't find something in that 30 list of games that you didn't like, then you probably don't want to play on a Nintendo Switch. You probably want to play your games elsewhere.
Yeah, that's the thing. Out of the 30 titles, there had to be one or two titles that you walk away from. It's like, wow, I'm really looking forward to playing that. And like we said, Project Triangle, strategy, that's something for us. Mario Golf for others, Skyward Sword for some people. But you walked away with something. You didn't have to love the whole show. No one's ever going to love an entire Direct. But overall, I think it did what it had to do. I think it was just simply a case of we hadn't had the style of Direct in so long. We haven't heard about Breath of the Wild 2 in so long. You had expectation and hopes higher than you could ever live up to. And when you give people a good show, but they're expecting E3 caliber show, some people are going to be disappointed. But I think if they come back to it in a day or two, they'll say, that was actually a pretty good showcase for Nintendo. And I'm looking forward to, Mario Golf or No More Heroes 3.
Yeah.
It was nice to get updates on a lot of the games we have heard about leading up to this point and finally have release dates for most of them now. Now we can move into some of the Streamlab questions. And we had a $100 donation from Calvin Atkinson, whom is one of the individuals this episode is dedicated to. And he writes, "Hey, Nate and MVG, which of these would you prefer to exist? A Final Fantasy VI remake on the Switch, similar to the DS remakes, or Bravely Default 2, or a Final Fantasy IX remake on the PlayStation 5 in the style of the Final Fantasy VII remake? As always, you guys make great content."
I would take the Final Fantasy VI.
You would take the 3D Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 6?
Yep.
Man. See, of those two options, I'd go with Final Fantasy 6 because I think Final Fantasy 6 is one of the best Final Fantasy games ever made, but I still want it in Octopath style.
Yeah.
But in these terms, as Calvin lays out, Final Fantasy 6 in the DS remake style.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree. Then had a $4.44 donation from Yerk Diff. Writes, "Hey there, Mr. Nate and Mr. MVG. If you were to develop your dream video game, disregarding time or budget constraints, what might it look like? I'm currently developing my dream indie game, but I'm not quite ready to share details just yet. Winky face."
As someone that's an old arcade nut, I'd probably do an arcade shoot 'em up style game. I think one of the things that I've seen in recent times of shoot 'em up games is there's something that's missing from modern day shooters that was so good about shoot 'em up games in the 90s in the arcades. It's very hard to put a finger on, but I'd want to do a fully pixelated shoot 'em up game in the style of something like R-Type or something along those lines. That would be something that I'd love to do.
Man, anything. See, I don't have the talent to do it, but I mean, I'd love to make a game in the style of like a Metal Slug with that type of sprite animation, or a light gun game, a really good light gun game.
Yep.
Just don't know how to make it work on modern TVs. Then had a $5 donation from Matthew Hammond, who writes, imagine if Nintendo never does a price drop before they reach 100 million Switch systems. Do people realize how crazy that is? If they were able to drop the Switch to 150 and the Switch Lite to 79, they would far exceed the Nintendo DS sales total.
Yes, they would, but it would also eat into their profits as well.
You think they would pass the Nintendo DS?
If they dropped the price to that, basically cut the price in half, right? I would think so. I would think so. But the problem is they'll never do that, obviously.
Right.
But look, if they literally cut the price of the Switch in half, and you've got Zelda and Metroid and these big games to come, and Mario Kart's still selling, tens of millions of units every year, and Animal Crossing and everything, I could probably see them getting there.
I think they could come close. I see the Switch topping out around 130, depending how they calculate the total sales. If they view the Switch of 2021 or early 2022 as a successor when they're counting their sales totals, then obviously we're going to have to scale that number back.
I think they're going to just incorporate it into the same bucket like the DS, right, DSi and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's my thought process with it. I mean, DS sold 154 million units. We're 53% of the way there with, the current Switch sales. It's possible. I don't know if Nintendo will ever get that aggressive though with price drops.
No, there's no way. I mean, they're not even going to drop the price. I mean, you've got people like me that buy the Mario limited edition red Switch when I already have two of them. Why did I buy it? I don't know. I just thought it looked cool, and that's how they get you, man. And that's why they've been so successful for such a long time. There's no reason to drop the price. Dropping the price will definitely make them sell more, but it will also eat into their profit margin, and there's no reason for them to do that.
Yeah, usually when these companies look at price drops, they're always trying to spark more sales, but they know it's always temporary. And right now, Switch is just lighting up the sales chart. So, yeah, they really have no reason to price drop, and price drops kind of feel like a relic of the past. We don't get those huge price drops anymore. Remember when PlayStation 2s were $99?
Yeah. Yep.
PlayStation 3 was never, $150. That it just doesn't happen anymore. We just move on to the next generation and we phase out the previous generation at a $250, $300 price point, and then one day they're just not on the shelves anymore. Then a $1 donation from Jackie G, who writes, Breath of the Wild 2, Bayonetta 3, Metroid Prime 4, and Pikmin 4. What order do they release in?
We didn't see any of those today, other than Breath of the Wild 2, which we think is coming out next year. We feel pretty good about. What order are they coming out in? Oh my god, I don't even know where to start with that. All I know is none of them are coming out this year.
I'd say Breath of the Wild 2, Pikmin 4, Bayonetta 3, Metroid Prime 4. That sounds good.
Yeah, I would say so. Also, quick note, I know a lot of people were expecting Bayonetta 3 news today because someone at Platinum Games retweeted it, I think, the news about the Direct. So there was all this hype and rumors, but Were you ever expecting to see Bayo 3 at this direct? I didn't feel like it was ever part of their plans.
No, I didn't expect to see Bayonetta 3. I thought we may have seen Platinum in a different way, but not Bayonetta.
Yep.
Then had a $2 donation from Liam Werner, who writes 2 questions. Could we see a Switch Lite Pro like how there was a new 3DS and a new 3DS XL?
A Switch Lite Pro. I hope they call it something else. It's already got me confused.
I mean, I could see a Switch Lite with the internals of the Pro, but it'd probably be a year or two after the introduction of the revision, once they are able to get those components down to a better size and they have a better idea of heat distribution, battery life, all those type of things.
Yeah.
And then question 2. Do we actually know a Zelda collection is coming? It's a safe bet, but it wasn't actually leaked like Mario. And I'm worried people are hyping it up too much. Officially, no, Nintendo has not announced it yet, and they continue to not want to announce this game. But I am very confident that we do see a Zelda collection, or at least more Zelda games like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD be introduced for release in 2021. Whether or not it's dubbed and branded as a Zelda collection, that's entirely up to Nintendo's marketing department.
Yeah, this is definitely I mean, there's nothing official, and Nintendo can always, throw curveballs at us, but this is definitely a where there's smoke, there's fire type thing, and I definitely think we'll see a 35th collection at some point this year.
Then had a $10 donation from Ocean Man, who wrote, "Love the content, Nate. Hope this helps keep the channel lights on." It does. Then had a $5 donation from Dan, who wrote, "Wanted to get your feelings on the Switch 2 in 2024 versus 2023. 7 years feels about right if they do a Pro version by the end of this year, early next year. If 2024, total console sales of 135,000 seems very likely. Thoughts?" I'm going to assume you meant 135 million for the Switch.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems like a likely figure. As for a Switch 2, the problem with the Switch 2 talk right now is we simply don't know how Nintendo's positioning this revision. We don't know if they're using it as like a Game Boy Color and they just want to buy a few more years to extend this current generation, or if they're going that mobile iterative route of, this is the new hardware, we're just going to call it the Switch family, and we're not going to do the traditional Switch 2, Switch 3 type of branding. So it's really hard to gauge when we would see a successor in the traditional sense of the word. If they wanted to continue that path of being traditional with new generations and such, I would definitely probably side more with 2024 at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We need to know what's next, what they're going to show us, and what's going to release. Depending on what that is and when it comes out, we'll kind of determine, I think, when we expect to see what comes after that, because we don't really know at this point.
And then had another $5 donation from Dan, who writes, why do you think third parties hold off on bringing older titles to the Switch? I realize these aren't plug and play, but Dragon Quest VIII or Final Fantasy IV or VI would sell amazingly even without upgraded graphics. Please give me more Square RPGs. A lot of the time, it's really they don't have a studio or a team to do the projects. It's unfortunate. It is that simple sometimes. We don't have any available developers to make this project for this platform, or we don't want to allocate funds to make it happen.
Yeah.
But as big as these studios are, a lot of, you have them focus on one project. You can't take 30 people to say, hey, make this port happen. And even external studios to make ports, it's still a lot of logistics. It costs money. And a lot of these studios, like people look at Panic Button and all the Switch ports they do, that is still a lot of work to get them to, get that project. And those studios are always busy. So it really is a matter of money, time, and availability. Then had a $102.17 donation from the Zelda Sensei, who writes, direct hype, embrace the hate. Look forward to hearing from you two on the podcast in the coming days. Thank you. Then had a $5 donation from Skitiddles, who wrote, knock knock, who's there? Not Wind Waker HD on the Switch. Yet. One day the wind will blow. Then had a $5 donation from Agrius Oaks, who wrote, really excited to see Project Triangle Strategy, but am concerned about the prospects of a Final Fantasy Tactics port now. Do you think there's still a chance? Great show as always. Ooh.
I do think there's still a chance, and maybe it's the fanboy in me, coming out and saying that. But I mean, I think that you can have Project Triangle and FF Tactics as separate entities. Even though there's obviously a lot of, there's some overlap there. I do think there is a place for an FF Tactics, game to come back.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for Final Fantasy Tactics still to reside. I don't know if I see Square doing a port necessarily anytime soon,
right.
But I would love for them to. I would take even the Game Boy Advance game of Tactics Advance.
There is one thing. I don't want to talk about this too much, but remaking PlayStation games, it's a lot more complicated than bringing back a Super NES or a Sega Genesis or a 16-bit game. Obviously, there is a lot of PlayStation branding in those games. Think about when you save your game, it brings up the PlayStation memory card. Insert your memory card into port 2, all that stuff, right? Everything has to change. There's a lot of specific to the PlayStation, button icons and all sorts of different things that need to be taken out. Right, so when we're talking about bringing back a PlayStation game in 2021, there's a lot more complexity than what you initially think. But having said that, I do still think that there is room for FF Tactics to come back, because I think it's definitely a beloved game, and I think people want to see it, and I think Square knows that as well. So hopefully, if there is a will, there is a way on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic series of games with Final Fantasy Tactics, and I'm hopeful that Project Triangle Strategy, satisfies in that way. It gives us that gameplay. It gives us all those elements that made Tactics so great, and maybe this is the birth of a brand new IP that will fill that void if Square doesn't have the interest of revitalizing Final Fantasy Tactics. Sometimes it's just the natural order of the industry itself. There was a time and place for one IP. We introduce a brand new one that is built up on that foundation, and that could be what we're seeing here. We'll find out. And that's all the Streamlabs questions for this week. If you would like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate $100 or more. We will dedicate the episode to you, or you can make a donation of any value. Ask a question. We will answer it at the end of the episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give the video a like. Let us know your thoughts on the Nintendo Direct and our idea that Nintendo has inadvertently implied that Breath of the Wild 2 is no longer a release for 2021 in the comment section below. As always, I'd like to thank my co-host, MVG, for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Nate, and it was great fun to dissect the Direct today.
Yes, it was. We haven't had a chance to do this in a long time, so it was fun to get our teeth back into the Direct meat. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, continue to embrace the hate.